Hey friends, it's Ruben with Hi-Fi MIDI. In this video, I want to show you 6 easy steps to creating realistic and natural sounding strumming on Amplisound acoustic guitars. If you want to go from this to this, stick around because these principles will help you make some convincing sounding acoustic guitar tracks. They'll also transfer over to other sample libraries, although Amplisound has the best workflow in my opinion. For this project, I am using AGM and I'm using the pick library. If we go to Riffer, create a new riff, set your meter to 3/4, riff quantized to 16th notes, and riff BPM to 105. Ideally, I would set it to 3/4 triplets. However, as of the date of posting this video, selecting swing will cause your riff to play at 1.5 times the speed of your DAW's tempo. I really hope Amplisound fixes this. For now, set it to 3/4 meter. Next, create 4 measures. The chords for this exercise are simple. Measure 1 is going to be G major. Measure 2 is D major. Measure 3 is A minor 7. And measure 4 is C major, and then open strings on the third beat. We'll now create our strums on the strum line. So if I hold down Option, pencil tool opens up, and I can click on the string line and select my first chord. So this is going to be a G major. And rather than going through that step again, I'm just going to hold Option, click, and then drag to the and of 2. And then click and drag to beat 3. That's our rhythm. Next, we're going to highlight all the notes and then click legato. Next, I'm going to click and drag to the next measure because it has the same rhythm. Highlight the notes on the string line only. And we're going to play a D major. We're going to copy this. Highlight these notes again and then select A minor 7. And on the last measure, we have C, C, and then you can click any chord right here. It doesn't matter. I'm going to play C again. But on this one, I'm just going to drag all the notes down and make sure all of them are playing open strings, meaning none of the frets are being used. And then once again, select the notes and then press legato. Let's hear it. This already sounds pretty good, since Amplisound has natural voicings for chords and the recording quality is excellent. However, it could still be better. When programming acoustic guitar tracks with the goal of realistic playback, it's important to imagine yourself playing guitar. Here's a very simple rule of thumb to guide your programming. Guitarists typically strum downward on the strong beats and upward on the weak beats. So in 3/4, beats 1, 2, and 3 would strum downward, while the ands of each beat will strum upward. By default, creating a strum will be set to downstroke. So just look for the ands of each beat. Select them all and set them to upstroke. This is pretty easy to find since they're the shortest notes on here. So there's 3 in total, and then we're going to make those upstrokes. What this does is that it changes the order in which the notes are played, creating the feel and sound of an upstroke. That already sounds better. When a real guitarist plays, they won't always strum every single note in the chord. Sometimes this is by accident. but most of the time it's intentional, at least for competent guitarists. For this reason, we'll go ahead and delete some notes in some of the chords. Try not to do this randomly. Be intentional about it. Some questions you might ask yourself are, do I want a bassy sound? Then focus on the low notes. Do I want a bright sound? Then focus on the high notes. In this case, I want to focus on the low notes, so I'll delete some of the high strings. To make it simple, I'm going to delete half of the high strings on the upstrokes. I'll also delete the lowest note of any downstroke that is not on beat 1. I want beat 1 of each measure to clearly play the chord. So we'll keep all these, delete half of these, delete the bottom note on this downstroke, keep these, delete half of these, delete the bottom note. In this case, I'll just delete 2 of these. Delete the bottom note. Delete the bottom note. And then I'll keep this one. It's slowly starting to sound more intentional, have more variety, and sounding a little bit more musically interesting. Not only will a real guitarist strum each chord differently depending on the beat or stroke direction, they'll also sometimes play each string differently within a chord. For example, an upstroke is usually played softer than a downstroke, so we can lower the velocity of the upstrokes. You can make this whatever you want, but let's set it to 60 for now. The default note velocity on my plugin is 80, so every new note that I input is going to be set to 80. I'm going to set the upstrokes to 60. Already it sounds like there is some intentionality in the playing. You can hear some beats emphasized over others, which gives a strum pattern, motion, and energy. Now let's focus on individual strings. With the new 3.7 update, we can now edit individual notes within a strum rather than having to do it in your DAW's MIDI editor. On beat 1, we have a fully strummed chord. Real guitarists will time a strum so that the highest string in the chord will land right on beat 1. That means that all the other notes will be slightly before the beat. This also means that the highest note should receive some emphasis. Let's change the note velocity of each note, getting lower the further from the highest note we go. Right now the highest note has a velocity of 80. For simplicity, we can make the lowest note 60. And then we'll go up little by little. I'll go ahead and go quickly through this section, but you'll see that it's going to ease up to those higher velocities. All right, so that took me a couple of minutes to do, but since this is something that's likely going to be repeated, it's worth spending the time on it. Let's listen to it. Already, this is sounding more expressive as a performance. One big mistake many people, including myself, make when programming strums is not adding swing. I'd like you to pretend you're holding a guitar pick. Now pretend you're playing this strum pattern. Did your arm change directions in 29 milliseconds? Not likely. Doing so would sound robotic. Because your arm makes a twisting motion, it produces a natural swing in the rhythm. We're going to do the same to this strum. But first, make sure you save this pattern as this is the last thing we do in Riffer. Now, drag your pattern onto your track. It should look something like this. Now, let's take a moment to figure out what we're looking at. The light blue notes are your key switches. These were created by Riffer. Here is the sustain articulation, and here are your 4-string key switches, which are tied to specific notes above. These are the actual played notes that we saw in Riffer. A5 is downstroke noise, which makes it sound strummier. A#5 is an upstroke noise. G5 silences notes from previous chords, and B5 is downstroke noise too. Now let's add some swing. In this type of rhythm, the upstroke is going to be on the swung beat. So we're going to set our grid to 8th notes. I'm not sure if this is a Cubase only feature. In Cubase, you don't have to set it to 8th note triplets, which creates a grid with a hard swing. I want my swing to be a little softer than that. So I'll set my grid to 8th notes, go into my quantize editor, and set my swing to 75%. You can see the grid line changing to reflect this feel. I'll briefly highlight the notes that I'll have to align to the swing. Remember, these are all upstrokes. Okay, now let's zoom in. As you can see, the 8th note divisions of each measure are uneven because of the swing we set. Let's zoom into our first upstroke. This should be easy to spot because the duration is only an 8th note long and it's an upstroke, so the high notes are played first. Notice that the 4-string key switches align with the note above. Be very careful not to mess this up. The goal right now is to have the last note align with the swing beat, which is this line right here. To do that, I'll highlight the 4-string notes, the played notes, and the downstroke noise. Now I want to make sure that G1, since it's the last note, will align with the swing beat line. This means that D2 and B1 will be slightly ahead of the beat. Make sure that your grid is off. Now I can simply drag them as a group until G1 aligns with the beat. Make sure the notes are not overlapping with the next ones either. Now let's do that to all the upstrokes. Let's give it a listen. That already sounds pretty natural. The last timing adjustment I'm going to do is for the initial strum. Let's make it slow. But you're going to want to do this after you've duplicated your MIDI region. Otherwise, it's going to mess up the timing of the duplicate MIDI regions. So we're going to go into the first MIDI region. This is the first beat, and we're going to extend that back 1 beat. I'm going to make sure my grid is on. Let's zoom in. Then I'm going to set my grid to 64th notes. It's going to be a very small duration. So notice that these played strings coincide with the 4-string key switches. We want to keep those aligned. So we're going to take the highest string and select the 4th-string that is assigned to it. Make sure this is right on the beat. Turn my grid off. All right. Next, we're going to get the next string and the next 4th string and do the same thing. We're going to go back 1 note division each time. And this is a sustain key switch. So this has to be with the first note. Now the downstroke noise will have to be at the beginning. Let's listen to that. So it should sound like a slow strum. At this point, any other adjustments would have minimal impact on the sound. The next thing I can think of is just the settings on the guitar itself, like the mics, doubling, the release effects, or the string noises, or even whether you're using the finger library or strum library, but this is the quickest way to achieve those results. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. If you're new to my channel, hit that subscribe button and notification bell to stay up to date with my latest videos. Leave a comment below telling me what you thought about this. And if you haven't done so, visit hifimidi.com if you want to go more in depth with the software or learn MIDI programming. Your purchase helps support this channel and makes it possible for me to produce new videos. Thanks for watching.